My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 32 years old, and the night I found out my parents had erased me from the family, I was grading papers in my tiny apartment while they were at a gala telling everyone I was doing humanitarian work in Guatemala. I wasn't in Guatemala. I was 3 miles away, teaching fourth grade for $38,000 a year. But here's the thing that's going to make your blood boil. When I won State Teacher of the Year and stood on that stage with the governor, my mother tried to rush up and hug me for the cameras. And what I did next, even I didn't see coming. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment I realized that the family I thought loved me had actually written me off years ago. I just didn't know it yet. Growing up, the Mitchell family was what you'd call aspirational. My father, Robert Mitchell, was a real estate developer who'd made his fortune flipping commercial properties in downtown Seattle. My mother, Catherine, didn't work, but she had a full-time job nonetheless, managing the family's image. She sat on charity boards, hosted fundraisers, and made sure everyone knew that the Mitchells were important. My older brother, David, he was the golden child. 35 years old, a corporate attorney at one of those firms where they bill $500 an hour and work you to death. He drove a Tesla, lived in a penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay, and every Christmas he'd casually mention his year-end bonus like it was normal to make more in December than most people make in 2 years. Then there was my sister, Amanda, 33, a marketing executive at Amazon. She wore Louboutins to family dinners and talked about her stock options the way some people talk about their pets. Her Instagram was a carefully curated highlight reel of business-class flights, rooftop bars, and motivational quotes about grinding and winning. And then there was me. Sarah, the youngest. The one who, according to my mother, had so much potential until I threw it all away. I didn't throw anything away. I made a choice. But in my family, choosing passion over profit was the same as failure. When I graduated high school, I had a 3.9 GPA and acceptance letters from Cornell, Northwestern, and Georgetown. My father had already planned my future. Business degree MBA, join his company, eventually take over the family empire. He'd even had business cards printed with my name on them. Sarah Mitchell, Vice President of Development. I was 18 years old and my career was already decided. But that summer, something happened that changed everything. I volunteered at a summer literacy program for low-income kids in South Seattle. There was this girl, Destiny, 9 years old, reading at a second grade level, convinced she was stupid because that's what she'd been told her whole life. I worked with her every single day for 8 weeks. By the end of summer, she was reading Harry Potter. The day she finished the first book, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Miss Sarah, I'm not dumb. I'm actually smart." That moment broke something open inside me. Or maybe it put something back together. I don't know. All I knew was that I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my life. I told my parents at dinner 2 weeks before college started. I wasn't going to Cornell for business. I deferred my acceptance and applied to the University of Washington's education program instead. I wanted to teach elementary school. My father put down his fork. He didn't say anything for a full minute. Just stared at me like I'd announced I was joining a cult. My mother's face went pale. "Sarah," she said slowly as if talking to a child, "teachers make nothing. You'll never afford a decent life. You'll never be able to retire. You'll be living paycheck to paycheck forever." I tried to explain about destiny, about the impact, about how money wasn't everything. My father cut me off. "Money isn't everything until you don't have it," he said. "Then it's the only thing. You're being naive and emotional. This is a phase. You'll start at Cornell in the fall as planned." I didn't go to Cornell. I went to UW. I paid for it myself with scholarships, loans, and a part-time job at a coffee shop where I worked 30 hours a week while taking a full course load. My parents didn't contribute a single dollar, not because they couldn't afford it, because they were punishing me. My graduation from college, they didn't come. My mother said they had a conflict. A business trip to Napa that couldn't be rescheduled. David sent a text. "Congrats on the degree." My sister didn't even acknowledge it. I got my first teaching job at Rainier Elementary, a Title I school where 85% of the kids qualified for free lunch. The building was old, the resources were limited, and I spent half my salary on classroom supplies because the budget didn't cover basics like pencils and paper. But those kids, they showed up every day ready to learn, ready to trust me, and I loved them fiercely. My first year teaching, I invited my family to my classroom for a holiday party. I wanted them to see what I was doing, to meet my students, to understand why this mattered. My mother declined via email. "It's quite a drive, Sarah. And I'm not sure what we'd even do at an elementary school party. Perhaps another time never came. The exclusion happened gradually. It wasn't one dramatic moment. It was 1,000 small cuts that bled me slowly. Thanksgiving 2019. I drove 2 hours to my parents' house in Bellevue. When I walked in, I found place cards on the dining table. Mine was at the far end, squeezed between my teenage cousin and my aunt's new boyfriend, someone I'd never met. The head of the table was my father, surrounded by David, Amanda, and their significant others. The important people. When I asked my mother why I wasn't sitting with the immediate family, she adjusted her pearl necklace and said, "We're just trying to facilitate better conversation flow, dear. You'll have more in common with the younger crowd anyway." I was 29 years old. Christmas that year, gift opening happened in the living room. David got a Rolex from our parents. Amanda got a designer handbag, something French that cost more than my monthly rent. When my turn came, my mother handed me an envelope. Inside was a gift card to Target for $50 and a note that said, "For your classroom. We know you need supplies." They'd gotten me a teacher gift card. Like I was their child's teacher, not their actual child. But the moment that broke me, the one I still think about late at night, was my 30th birthday. I'd mentioned months earlier that it would be nice to have a family dinner. Nothing big, just us. My mother said she'd make a reservation. A week before my birthday, David called. "Hey, so Mom's planning this thing at the Bay Club on Saturday. Super exclusive, reservation only. It's for 6 people. Mom, Dad, Amanda, and her boyfriend, me and my wife." The reservation was non-negotiable, only 6 seats available. I felt my stomach drop. "My birthday is Saturday." "Yeah," he said, not even pausing. "Happy birthday, by the way." "Look, it's not personal. They just couldn't get more seats. My parents took my brother and sister out to a 5-star restaurant on my birthday and told me there wasn't room. Not that they couldn't afford a bigger table. That there wasn't room. I spent my 30th birthday alone in my apartment, eating Chinese takeout and watching Netflix, crying so hard I couldn't see the screen. The only person in my family who still treated me like I existed was my cousin Jakey. He was 26, fresh out of grad school, working as a social worker. We'd always been close. He was the only one who understood why I chose teaching. He'd chosen a helping profession too. And he'd gotten the same cold shoulder from the family. The night before Mother's Day 2020, Jake called me at almost midnight. His voice was shaking. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. I'm at your parents' house for dinner. I went to the bathroom and your mom's phone was on the counter. A text came through and I saw your name. I shouldn't have looked, but I did." My heart started racing. "What did it say?" "It's a group chat. Your parents, David, Amanda, your Aunt Karen. Your mom was complaining about you," she said. And I quote, "I'm embarrassed to tell people what Sarah does for a living." When they ask about my children, I mention David's law career and Amanda's position at Amazon. I pretend Sarah is abroad doing nonprofit work. It's just easier than admitting I raised a daughter who makes poverty wages. The room spun. "What?" David replied. "At least she's off the family payroll. She made her choice." Amanda sent a laughing emoji. "Sarah." A laughing emoji. Jake's voice cracked. "I took screenshots. I'm sending them now." "I'm so sorry. You deserve to know." My phone buzzed. One image, then another. I stared at the words on the screen, my mother's words, and something inside me went completely still. I read those screenshots maybe 100 times that night. Not because I didn't understand them. I understood perfectly. I read them because some desperate part of me kept looking for a different interpretation. A way those words could mean something less cruel. There wasn't one. My mother was ashamed of me, not disappointed, not concerned, ashamed. She was lying to people, telling them I was abroad because the truth, that I was a teacher, was too humiliating for her to admit. My siblings thought this was funny. They laughed about it, about me. I sat on my couch until the sun came up, phone in my hands, screenshots glowing in the darkness. And I made a decision. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, fine. I would make it easy for them. I would disappear completely. But I wouldn't forget, and I would save every piece of evidence. Because something told me I'd need it someday. Mother's Day morning, I woke up to silence. No calls, no texts, no awkward "we wish you could be here" messages. Nothing. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't send flowers. I didn't call. I didn't drive to Bellevue to sit at the end of the table and smile through another performance of Happy Family. I made coffee. I went for a run. I came home and worked on lesson plans for the upcoming week. And I thought about what came next. I could confront them. Show up at their house with the screenshots, demand an explanation, force them to acknowledge what they'd said about me. I could post the screenshots online. Let the world see what kind of parents tell people their daughter is abroad when she's really just 3 miles away teaching kids to read. I could call each of them individually. Tell them exactly how much they'd hurt me, make them feel guilty. But what would any of that accomplish? They'd made their choice. They'd chosen image over their own daughter. They decided that my career made me disposable, an embarrassment, something to hide. If they wanted me gone, I would give them what they wanted. But on my terms, not because they rejected me, because I chose myself. I blocked all their numbers that afternoon. My mother, my father, David, Amanda. I deleted Facebook and Instagram so I wouldn't torture myself with their perfect family photos. I didn't announce my decision. I just went silent. I didn't know then that my silence would last 3 years. I didn't know those 3 years would change absolutely everything. The world kept turning without the Mitchell family in it. And honestly, I started to thrive. Without the constant weight of their judgment, without the endless feeling of not being enough, I could finally breathe. My second year teaching became my third, then my fourth. My reading scores were consistently the highest in the district. Parents requested me specifically. I started a before-school tutoring program that ran on coffee and determination. Kids who'd been written off as slow or difficult blossomed in my classroom because I saw them, really saw them, the way I'd wished my own family had seen me. In year 5, I met Daniel Torres. He was the new PE teacher at Rainier, and he showed up to our first staff meeting wearing a Seahawks jersey and carrying a box of donuts he'd bought for everyone. He had this energy about him, warm and genuine, the kind of person who remembered everyone's name after meeting them once. We started talking in the teacher's lounge. Then those conversations moved to coffee after school, then dinner, then weekend hikes. Daniel didn't care that I drove a beat-up Honda Civic or that my apartment was tiny or that my job would never make me rich. He cared that I loved what I did. He cared that I showed up for my kids. He cared about me. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at a park overlooking Puget Sound. Jake was there, my maid of honor. A handful of teacher friends, some of my former students and their families. Daniel's huge extended family filled up the rest of the space with laughter and love, and the kind of joy that doesn't require a country club membership. My parents weren't invited, not out of spite, they just weren't part of my life anymore, and I'd made peace with that. Or at least, I thought I had. 6 months into my marriage, I enrolled in a graduate program, educational leadership. I took night classes, wrote papers after Daniel fell asleep, studied during summer break. It took me 3 years to finish, working full-time while earning my master's degree, but I did it. No family money, no trust fund. Just student loans and scholarships, and the kind of stubborn determination that comes from having something to prove. When the principal position opened at Rainier Elementary, I applied. The interview panel included the superintendent, 2 school board members, and a parent representative. They asked about my vision for the school, my leadership style, my plans for improving outcomes for our most vulnerable students. I told them the truth. That I believed every child deserved a teacher who fought for them. That poverty wasn't a learning disability. That with the right support, any kid could succeed. That I would advocate fiercely for resources, for training, for anything our students needed to thrive. I got the job. At 31 years old, I became the youngest principal in the district. The announcement went out in the local paper. Sarah Mitchell Torres named principal of Rainier Elementary. There was a photo of me shaking hands with the superintendent, smiling, proud of what I'd built with my own 2 hands. I didn't think anyone in my family would see it. Seattle's a big city. They lived in their Bellevue bubble. I lived in South Seattle. Our worlds didn't overlap anymore. But Jake saw it. And Jake, being Jake, was so excited he shared it on Facebook before thinking about the consequences. That's when everything changed. The email came 3 days after the announcement. The subject line read, "From your mother." I stared at it for a full 5 minutes before opening it. My hands were shaking. "Dearest Sarah," it began, and I almost laughed at the word dearest. "I saw the wonderful news about your promotion to principal. I always knew you had leadership potential. I'm so proud of you. We should reconnect soon. Perhaps lunch. I'd love to hear about everything you've been doing. It's been far too long." Not a single word about the 3 years of silence. Not an acknowledgement of the screenshots, the lies she'd told about me being abroad, the way she'd pretended I didn't exist. Just an invitation to lunch as if we'd simply lost touch. I didn't respond. 4 days later, my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Sarah." It was Amanda's voice, saccharine sweet, Oh my god, I've been trying to reach you for days. Mom told me about your new position. That's so amazing. We should definitely celebrate. Family dinner this weekend. Why now? I asked quietly. Why reach out now after 3 years of nothing? Silence on the other end. Then, what do you mean? We've always cared about you, Sarah. You're the one who went silent. I hung up. That night I told Daniel everything. Showed him the old screenshots, the new emails. Explained the 3 years of erasure. He listened, his jaw getting tighter with each detail. They don't want you back, he said finally. They want the version of you they can brag about. Principal sounds better than teacher at their dinner parties. I knew he was right. But knowing it and feeling it were two different things. The text started coming after that. David sent one that said, "Hey stranger, heard about the principal thing? That's legit, we should grab drinks." My father sent an email with the subject line "Congratulations." That included a long paragraph about how he'd always known I'd find my way to leadership eventually. Leadership. As if being a teacher wasn't leadership. As if the 7 years I'd spent in the classroom didn't count, because they didn't result in a title he could name drop. My mother called from different numbers when I didn't answer. She left voicemails. Sarah, sweetheart, I don't understand why you're avoiding us. Please call me back. We're family. Family. That word in her mouth felt like a weapon. Jake called me one night, his voice urgent. Sarah, I need to warn you about something. Your mom has been calling everyone. Our aunts, our cousins. Telling them you've cut off the family for no reason. She's painting herself as the victim, saying she doesn't know what she did wrong. Of course she was. Classic move. Rewrite the narrative, play the victim, make me look like the ungrateful daughter. What did you tell them? I asked Jake. The truth. That she's been lying about where you were for 3 years. That she told people you were doing nonprofit work abroad when you were teaching 15 minutes away. That she's ashamed to admit her daughter is a teacher. Jake paused. Most people didn't believe me at first. But your Aunt Karen remembered. She remembered your mom saying you were in Guatemala at Christmas dinner. Now she's asking questions. Let her ask, I said. 2 months later, everything exploded in a way I never expected. I got a call from the State Department of Education. My name had been submitted for Washington State Teacher of the Year. Not Principal of the Year, Teacher of the Year. Because before I became a principal, I'd spent 7 years in the classroom changing lives. The woman on the phone explained that the award recognized educators who demonstrated exceptional dedication, innovation, and impact. There'd be a ceremony in Olympia, a televised event. The governor would present the award personally. I almost said no. The attention, the spotlight. The risk that my family would somehow insert themselves into this moment, it felt dangerous. But Daniel looked at me across the kitchen table and said, Sarah, you earned this. Don't let them take it from you. Not this. He was right, so I said yes. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 months away. In that time, I threw myself into work, into preparing my acceptance speech, into trying not to think about the fact that this would be public, televised, unavoidable. Jake called 6 weeks before the ceremony. Sarah, you need to hear this. I'm at your parents' house. They're planning to come to the ceremony. They're talking about what to wear, where to sit, how to make sure they're visible on camera. Your mom keeps saying this will be good for the family image. My blood went cold. They weren't invited. I know. But your mom found out about it. Someone at the education department has a connection to someone at your dad's company. Small world. Now she's telling everyone that her daughter is receiving a prestigious state award, and of course they'll be there to support you. Did she say anything else? Jake hesitated. She said, and I'm quoting here, this will finally put to rest all those ridiculous rumors that we don't support Sarah's career. We'll be right there in the front row, showing everyone that the Mitchells are a united family. I felt sick. She was planning to use my moment, my award, as a photo opportunity to repair her reputation. I called the ceremony coordinator the next morning. This is going to sound strange, I said, but I need to make sure my parents aren't given access to the family seating section. We're estranged, and I don't want them there. The coordinator was kind but firm. I'm so sorry, but we can't legally prevent anyone from attending a public event. If they purchase tickets, they have the right to be there. What about the stage? Can you prevent them from coming on stage? Only honored guests and presenters are allowed on stage. Security will enforce that. It wasn't enough. But it would have to do. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining my mother in the audience, wearing something expensive, smiling for the cameras, playing the role of proud parent for people who didn't know the truth. I imagined her trying to hug me afterward, trying to take credit, trying to rewrite 3 years of abandonment into a narrative of unconditional support. Daniel held me while I cried. Tomorrow you tell your story, he said, your truth, not theirs. No matter what happens, you own that stage, not them. I wrote my speech in the dark at 3 in the morning. Every word deliberate. Every sentence a choice. By the time the sun came up, I knew exactly what I was going to say. The Washington State Legislative Building had never looked more intimidating. I'd seen it from the outside dozens of times. But walking through those doors as an honoree felt surreal. The ceremony was being held in the Capitol Rotunda, a massive space with marble floors and a dome that seemed to touch the sky. 300 seats arranged in semicircular rows. Every seat filled with educators, legislators, press. 4 news crews set up along the sides. A stage at the front with a podium, a massive screen behind it displaying the state seal, and 2 chairs. One for the superintendent of public instruction, one for the governor. Daniel and I checked in at the registration table. A volunteer handed me my name badge. Sarah Mitchell Torres, 2024 Washington State Teacher of the Year. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pin it on. We were directed to the front row, reserved for honorees and their immediate families. Daniel sat beside me, his hand wrapped around mine, steady and warm. On my other side, an empty seat. I'd only brought Daniel. Everyone else who mattered, my teacher friends, my students' families. Jake, they were scattered throughout the audience. My real family. And then I saw them. 3 rows back. Impossible to miss. My mother in a cream Armani suit, pearls at her throat, hair perfect. My father beside her in an expensive charcoal suit. David and Amanda flanking them, dressed like they were attending a corporate gala. Amanda had brought her phone, already angled for selfies. David was checking his watch, the Rolex catching the light. My mother scanned the room until her eyes landed on me. She smiled, a bright, public smile, and waved slightly, as if we were close, as if this was normal. I turned back to the stage. Daniel squeezed my hand. Breathe, he whispered. I heard them before the ceremony started. My mother's voice, pitched to Carrie. That's my daughter up front, Sarah. She's the one being honored today. We're so incredibly proud. I always knew she'd make an impact in education. A woman near them responded, something I couldn't quite hear. My mother laughed, that performative tinkle she saved for strangers she wanted to impress. Yes, 7 years in the classroom before becoming a principal. She's always been driven. Gets it from me, honestly. I was very involved in her education growing up. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. Daniel leaned close. She's lying to strangers. Let her. Everyone who matters knows the truth. The lights dimmed. A woman walked to the podium, Dr. Helen Reyes, the state superintendent of public instruction. She was in her 60s, a former teacher herself, known for being fiercely protective of educators. Good afternoon, she began. Today we honor someone whose work embodies everything we value in education. Dedication, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to students who need us most. She clicked to the next slide. A photo of me in my classroom from 5 years ago, surrounded by students. All of us laughing at something one of them had said. I'd forgotten that photo existed. The district photographer had taken it for the website. Sarah Mitchell Torres began her career at Rainier Elementary, a Title I school where 85% of students qualified for free lunch. In her first year alone, her students' reading levels improved by an average of 2 grade levels. Not through magic. Through showing up every single day. Through believing in children others had written off. Through spending her own money on books and supplies when the budget ran dry. I felt tears prickling behind my eyes. Behind me I heard my mother whisper to someone, she's always been so generous. We raised her to give back, Dr. Reyes continued. Over 7 years. Sarah transformed her classroom into a place where struggling readers became confident students. She created a mentorship program pairing older students with younger ones. She started a free weekend tutoring program, volunteering her own time. She became the teacher parents requested by name, the one kids remembered decades later. Another slide. A photo from my wedding to Daniel, both of us laughing, surrounded by former students who'd insisted on attending. 3 years ago, Sarah earned her master's in educational leadership while working full-time. Last year, she became principal of Rainier Elementary at just 31 years old. Under her leadership, the school's proficiency rates have increased 22%. Teacher retention is the highest in the district, and every single decision she makes is driven by one question: what's best for kids? Dr. Reyes paused, looking directly at me. Before I introduce our governor, I want to say something personal. Sarah, I've known you since you were a first-year teacher. I've watched you grow, watched you fight for your students, watched you build something extraordinary. And I know it hasn't been easy. I know you've sacrificed. I know you've had to prove yourself over and over to people who should have believed in you from the start. My breath caught. Did she know? Had someone told her about my family? But the measure of a great educator isn't just what they accomplish, Dr. Reyes said. It's who they become in the process. And Sarah, you've become someone extraordinary, not because of privilege or connections, because of grit, heart, and an absolute refusal to give up on kids who need you. The audience erupted in applause. I felt Daniel's hand squeeze mine. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice again, pitched just loud enough for nearby rows to hear. I always told her she'd make us proud someday. I closed my eyes. 2 more minutes. I just had to get through 2 more minutes. Then I'd have the microphone, then I could tell my truth. Governor Patricia Lawson walked to the podium. A tall woman with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. She'd been a public school teacher for 20 years before entering politics. She knew this world. Sarah Mitchell Torres, she said warmly, represents the very best of Washington's educators. She's here today not because of headlines or viral moments, but because of thousands of quiet acts of dedication. Tests graded late at night, encouraging words whispered to struggling students, phone calls to parents, lessons redesigned until every child understood. Another slide. A letter from a former student's mother. Miss Torres didn't just teach my son to read. She taught him that he was capable of anything. She saw him when everyone else looked past him. Our family will never forget her. My eyes burned. I remembered that student Eric, a kid who'd come to me reading at a first grade level in fourth grade. By the end of the year, he was reading at grade level. By sixth grade, he was in advanced classes. I'd gotten a Christmas card from his mother every year since. Governor Lawson smiled. It is my absolute honor to present the 2024 Washington State Teacher of the Year Award to Sarah Mitchell Torres. The room exploded in applause. 300 people on their feet. I stood on shaking legs, Daniel right beside me, and walked toward the stage. Behind me I heard movement. Fast footsteps. My mother's voice, pitched with urgency. Sarah, honey. We're coming with you. I turned. She was moving toward the stage steps, my father right behind her, already reaching for the stairs like they had every right to join me. Security stepped in immediately, 2 officers blocking their path. I'm sorry, this area is restricted to honorees and presenters only. But I'm her mother, she said, voice rising. Surely there's an exception for family. I walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at her. There's no exception, I said clearly. Please return to your seats. Her face flickered, shock, then embarrassment, then anger. Sarah, don't be ridiculous. We came to support you. I turned away, walked to the podium where Governor Lawson waited with the award. A beautiful glass sculpture shaped like an apple tree, branches reaching upward. She placed it in my hands and whispered, "You've got this." I stood at the microphone, looking out at 300 faces. My mother had returned to her seat, her expression tight, furious. Amanda was typing frantically on her phone. David's jaw was clenched. My father stared straight ahead, avoiding eye contact. And then there was Daniel in the front row, smiling at me with so much love it hurt. Jake in the back, giving me a thumbs up. Former students scattered throughout the audience, some of them now in college, some of them now parents themselves, all of them beaming. I took a breath and began. Thank you, Governor Lawson, Dr. Reyes, and everyone who made today possible. This award, it means more than I can express. But before I say anything else, I need to tell you a story. Because standing here, accepting this honor, I'm thinking about a conversation I had 12 years ago. I was 20 years old, sitting at my parents' dinner table, telling them I wanted to be a teacher. The room went silent. I saw my mother shift in her seat. They told me I was making a mistake, I continued. That teaching was a poverty profession. That I'd never be successful, never be respected, never make them proud. My father told me teachers make nothing. My mother told me I was throwing my life away. Murmurs rippled through the audience. I kept going. For a long time, I believed them. Not that I'd made the wrong choice, but that I'd disappointed them in a way I could never repair. And I'm not going to lie, that hurt. It hurt every time they forgot my graduation, every time I sat at the end of the table at family dinners, every time they introduced me to their friends and sort of glossed over what I did for a living. My voice steadied. But here's what I learned. Being a teacher isn't about making other people proud. It's about showing up for kids who need someone to believe in them. It's about changing lives in ways that don't show up on a salary statement or a business card. It's about knowing that 20 years from now, A student might still remember the day you told them they were smart, capable, worthy. I looked directly at my mother. For anyone watching who's ever been told their career isn't good enough, who's ever felt ashamed of choosing service over status, I want you to hear this. You are enough. Your work matters. And you don't need anyone's validation to know your worth. The applause started slow, then built. One person standing, then 10, then 50, then everyone. 300 educators on their feet, clapping, some of them crying, all of them understanding exactly what I was saying. I waited for it to quiet. Now I want to thank the people who actually showed up. Dr. Rise, who took a chance on a nervous 22-year-old and taught me what leadership looks like. My colleagues at Rainier Elementary, who cover my classes when I need 5 minutes to cry in my office after a hard day. My former students, some of you are here today. Thank you for trusting me with your education and your hearts. I looked at Daniel, my husband Daniel Torres, who sees me at my worst, exhausted and covered in expo marker and grading papers at midnight, and still thinks I'm doing something extraordinary. Daniel, you're my partner in every sense of the word. I couldn't do this without you. I paused. And to my cousin Jake, who's been my real family through everything. Thank you for always telling me the truth. I didn't mention the Mitchell family, not once. No thank you to my parents for raising me. No acknowledgement of my siblings' presence. Just a glaring, deliberate absence. The room understood. I could see it in faces, the way people glanced toward my family's row, then back at me, putting together the pieces. To every teacher watching, I finished, who chose this profession despite the low pay, the long hours, the lack of respect from people who should know better. This award belongs to you too. We're not lowly. We're not throwing our lives away. We're changing the world one student at a time. And that's something to be proud of. I stepped back from the podium. The room erupted again. Governor Lawson hugged me, Dr. Reyes had tears in her eyes, and I walked off that stage with my head high. My mother was waiting in the hallway outside the rotunda. She moved toward me like a missile, my father and siblings close behind. How dare you, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. How dare you humiliate us like that in front of everyone? I kept walking, Daniel's hand on my back, security trailing us. Sarah, I'm talking to you. My mother's voice rose. After everything we've done for you, you repay us by airing private family matters on television. I stopped, turned to face her. Everything you've done for me. I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots I'd saved 3 years ago. I held them up so she could see. You told people I was abroad doing nonprofit work because you were too embarrassed to admit I was a teacher. You said I make poverty wages and it was easier to lie than to mention me. That's what you've done for me. Her face went white. David stepped forward. Sarah, this isn't the time or place. You're right, I said. The time was 3 years ago when Mom sent those messages. The place was the family group chat where all of you laughed about it. But neither of you said a word. You just went along with it. Amanda's voice, defensive and sharp. You're overreacting. It was a private conversation that you knew I'd see eventually. I looked at each of them. You didn't reach out for 3 years. Not once. Then the second I became a principal, the second my title was something you could brag about, suddenly you wanted me back. Not because you missed me. Because you could finally use me. Sarah, my father started, but I cut him off. No, I'm done listening. For 30 years I listened. I listened when you told me teaching was a mistake. I listened when you seated me at the kids' table. I listened when you forgot my graduation. I'm done. My mother's eyes filled with tears, the performative kind she'd perfected over decades. We're your family. You can't just cut us out forever. I already did. 3 years ago. The only difference is now you know about it. A reporter approached, microphone in hand. Ms. Torres, can we ask a few questions about your speech? My mother straightened immediately, tears disappearing, smiles sliding into place. Of course, we'd be happy to. She began. I stepped between her and the reporter. Actually, I'd prefer to speak alone. This is my award, my story. Not theirs. Security escorted my family away. I watched them go, my mother's perfect posture finally cracking. Amanda's phone out, recording everything. Probably already crafting some victim narrative for social media. David walking fast like he couldn't get away quick enough. I gave 3 interviews that afternoon. Every single one asked about my speech, about the family I'd conspicuously not thanked. I was honest. I talked about choosing yourself when the people who should love you make that love conditional. I talked about finding family in unexpected places. I talked about the cost of following your passion and why it's worth paying anyway. The story went viral within hours. Not because of the award. Because of what I'd said about my family. Headlines like Teacher of the Year calls out parents who were ashamed of her career and woman accepts prestigious award. Deliberately excludes family who mocked her profession started appearing everywhere. Jake called that night, laughing and crying at the same time. Sarah, your mom's phone is blowing up. Everyone's calling her asking about the speech. Aunt Karen confronted her at dinner. She asked your mom point blank if it was true, if she'd really told people you were abroad. Your mom tried to deny it, but I showed everyone the screenshots. The ones from 3 years ago. What happened? Aunt Karen called her a liar to her face. Said she remembered being told you were in Guatemala doing education work. Now she knows you were 15 minutes away the whole time. Half the family is furious. They're saying your mom's been manipulating everyone for years. And my siblings. David deleted his social media. Amanda's getting destroyed in her comments. Someone found her Instagram from 3 years ago where she posted family photos. Happy Thanksgiving with my favorite people. And people are commenting asking where you were, why you weren't included. She can't delete them fast enough. I should have felt vindicated. Maybe I did a little. But mostly I just felt tired of it all. The next morning my inbox was full. Hundreds of emails from teachers across the country sharing their own stories. Parents who'd been told their career choices were disappointing. People who'd been excluded from families because they chose passion over profit. Every single one of them said thank you. Thank you for saying what they'd been too afraid to say. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for proving that success doesn't look just one way. One email stood out. It was from Destiny, the little girl from that summer literacy program 12 years ago. The one who'd inspired me to become a teacher. Miss Sarah, I saw your speech. I'm 21 now. In college studying to be a teacher because of you. When you helped me that summer, you changed my whole life. You showed me I wasn't stupid. You showed me I could do anything. Now I want to do that for other kids. Thank you for not giving up on teaching, even when people told you to. Some of us needed you to stay. I cried reading that email. Daniel found me at the kitchen table, tears streaming down my face, and I showed him. This, I said. This is why it was worth it. Not the award, not proving my family wrong. This. My mother tried to reach out 2 weeks later. She sent a letter handwritten on her expensive stationery, the kind with her initials embossed in gold. I almost threw it away without reading it. Almost. Sarah, it began. I've had time to reflect on everything that happened at the ceremony. I want you to know that I never intended to hurt you. When I told people you were abroad, it wasn't because I was ashamed. It was because I was trying to protect you from judgment. The world can be cruel to teachers, and I wanted people to see you as more than your salary. I stopped reading. Protect me from judgment. She was still rewriting the narrative, still making herself the misunderstood hero. There was no apology for the actual words she'd said, no acknowledgement that telling people I was abroad when I was 3 miles away was a lie. Just more excuses. The letter went on. I understand you're angry, but I'm still your mother. I still love you, even if my methods of showing it have been flawed. I hope someday you can forgive me and we can rebuild our relationship. Family is important, Sarah. Don't let pride keep you from coming home, pride. She thought this was about pride. I put the letter in a drawer with the screenshots from 3 years ago. Evidence. A reminder of why I'd made the choices I made. Daniel asked if I was going to respond. I shook my head. There's nothing to say. She's not apologizing for what she did. She's apologizing for getting caught. That's not the same thing. Life moved forward. The media attention faded after a few weeks, replaced by the next viral story, the next controversy. My principal work continued. Budget meetings and teacher evaluations and parent conferences. The students didn't care about the award. They cared that I showed up every morning, that I knew their names, that I fought for them. 6 months later, I got another call from the state education department. Sarah, this is Dr. Reyes. I have some news. The district superintendent position is opening up. The board wants to know if you'd consider applying, superintendent. Overseeing 12 schools, 4,000 students, 150 staff members. It was a massive job, the kind of position that could reshape education across an entire district. I thought about my mother's reaction if I got it. How she'd suddenly reappear, how she'd tell everyone her daughter was a superintendent. Conveniently forgetting the years she'd pretended I didn't exist. How she'd try to take credit again. And then I thought about the 4,000 students who needed someone fighting for them. The teachers who deserved support and resources. The families who needed an advocate. I applied, not for my mother, not to prove anything to my family. For the kids. Always for the kids. The interview process took months. panel interviews, community forums, presentations to the school board. Daniel came to every single one, sitting in the audience, giving me thumbs up, believing in me even when I doubted myself. I got the job. At 33 years old, I became the youngest superintendent in Washington state history. The announcement made headlines again. Sarah Mitchell Torres, the teacher who went viral for calling out her family's rejection, just became one of the most powerful people in education in her region. My mother sent flowers to my office, an enormous arrangement, roses and lilies, with a card that read, "Congratulations, darling. So proud of you. Love, Mom." I had my assistant donate them to a nursing home. The first thing I did as superintendent was increase the budget for classroom supplies. Every teacher in the district would get a $1,000 stipend annually for materials. No more teachers spending their own poverty wages on pencils and paper. The second thing I did was create a mentorship program pairing experienced teachers with new ones. Because I remembered being a first-year teacher, drowning and desperate for someone to show me the way. The third thing I did was start a scholarship fund for students pursuing education degrees. Because we need more teachers, and we need to make it possible for passionate people to choose this profession without drowning in debt. I didn't do any of it to prove my family wrong. But I won't lie. There was some satisfaction in knowing that while they'd spent 3 years pretending I didn't exist, I'd been building something that would outlast all of us. Jake called me a year into my superintendent role. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Your mom's been diagnosed with breast cancer. Stage 2. She's starting treatment next week." My stomach dropped. "Is she okay?" "The prognosis is good. They caught it early." "But," Jake hesitated, "she's been asking about you. Keeps telling the doctors that she needs to reconcile with her daughter before treatment. She's scared." "Sarah," I sat with that information for a long time. Part of me felt guilty. She's sick and scared and I'm her daughter. Shouldn't I be there? Shouldn't I put aside the hurt and show up? But another part of me, the part that had learned the hard way that love doesn't erase abuse, that fear doesn't undo years of cruelty, that part knew better. I asked Daniel what he thought I should do. He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "What do you want to do?" "Not what you think you should do." "What do you actually want?" "I don't want to go," I admitted. "I don't want to sit by her hospital bed and pretend the last decade didn't happen. I don't want to give her absolution just because she's sick." "Does that make me a bad person?" "No," he said firmly. "It makes you someone who's learned to protect yourself. You can have compassion for her situation without sacrificing your own peace. Those things can coexist." I sent a card. Brief, neutral. "I hope your treatment goes well. Take care of yourself." I didn't sign it, "Love, Sarah." I didn't offer to visit. I didn't promise reconciliation. I just acknowledged her humanity without giving her access to mine. She called 2 days later. My number she must have gotten from Jake. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "Sarah, please. I'm scared. I need my daughter. I know I made mistakes, but life is short. Don't let pride keep you away." There was that word again. Pride. I texted Jake. "Tell her I received her messages. Tell her I wish her well with treatment. Tell her I'm not coming." He texted back. "Are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything. My mother survived treatment. According to Jake's updates, she responded well to chemo. The cancer went into remission. She was declared cancer-free after 6 months. I was glad. I didn't want her to die. I just didn't want her in my life. 2 years passed. My work as superintendent continued, sometimes exhilarating, often exhausting, always meaningful. Daniel and I bought a house, a small place with a yard and room for the family we were starting to talk about building. My former students kept in touch, sending me college acceptance letters, wedding invitations, baby announcements. The kids I'd taught were becoming adults, and they still remembered me, still credited me with changing their lives. That was legacy, not a title, not an award. Lives changed. On a random Tuesday in October, 5 years after the ceremony, I got a call from an unknown number. This time I answered Sarah. The voice was unfamiliar. "This is Dr. Patricia Lawson, the former governor. We met at your Teacher of the Year ceremony, Governor Lawson." I sat up straighter instinctively. "Of course I remember. What can I do for you?" "I'm calling because I'm launching a foundation focused on supporting educators. We're creating scholarships, grants for classroom supplies, leadership training programs, and I want you on the advisory board. Your story, your work, it's exactly the kind of thing we need to amplify." We talked for an hour. About education. About the systemic failures that push good teachers out of the profession. About how to change the narrative around what teaching means and what teachers deserve. By the end of the call, I'd agreed to join the board. The foundation launched 6 months later. A huge gala in Seattle, 500 people, press coverage, the works. I wore a dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, deep blue, elegant, the kind of thing I'd never been able to afford as a teacher. Daniel wore a suit. We walked in together, and I felt, for the first time in my life, like I belonged in that room. My family wasn't there. I hadn't told them about it. But Jake was there, beaming with pride. My colleagues from the district were there. Former students, now adults with careers and families of their own, showed up to support me. That was my family. The one I'd built myself. Governor Lawson introduced me during her speech. Sarah Mitchell Torres represents everything this foundation stands for. She chose teaching despite being told it was a mistake. She thrived despite being told she'd fail. She changed lives despite being told her work didn't matter. And now, she's helping shape the future of education for thousands of students across Washington state. The applause was warm, genuine. No one in that room had any idea about the family drama, the rejection, the years of silence. They just knew me as someone who dedicated her life to education and succeeded. That night, driving home with Daniel, I realized something. I'd spent so many years trying to prove my family wrong. Trying to show them that teaching mattered, that I mattered, that their rejection hadn't broken me. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped needing their validation. I'd built a life so full of meaning and purpose, and love that their opinion had become irrelevant. I wasn't the daughter who'd disappointed them. I was the educator who'd changed thousands of lives. I was the superintendent who'd fought for resources and equity. I was the wife who'd found partnership with someone who actually saw me. I was the friend, the mentor, the leader, the person who showed up. And that was enough. My mother tried one more time to reach out, about a year ago. She sent a letter to my office, which meant she'd looked up where I worked, tracked me down deliberately. The envelope was thick, multiple pages. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was different this time. No excuses, no justifications. Just an apology. Sarah, I'm writing this because my therapist says I need to take accountability, even if you never forgive me. What I did to you was cruel. Telling people you were abroad when you were teaching 3 miles away was a lie born from my own shame. Not shame about you. Shame about myself, about my own insecurities, about the fact that I'd raised my children to value money over meaning, and you'd somehow escaped that programming. I told myself I was protecting you from judgment. The truth is, I was protecting myself. I was afraid of what my friends would think, what my social circle would say. I chose their opinions over my daughter. That's unforgivable. You don't owe me forgiveness. You don't owe me a relationship. I'm not writing this to ask for either. I'm writing because you deserve to hear me say it. I was wrong. You were never the disappointment I was. I've watched your career from a distance. The principal position, the superintendent role, the foundation board. Every accomplishment proves what I should have known from the beginning. You didn't need my validation. You never did. I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be, but I am. Not because of titles or awards. Because you chose kindness over bitterness. You chose to build something beautiful instead of letting my cruelty destroy you. You're a better person than I ever taught you to be. You learned that somewhere else. I hope you're happy, Sarah. You deserve to be. I read that letter 3 times. It was everything I'd wanted to hear for a decade. A real apology, accountability, acknowledgement of the harm. And it came too late. Not because I'm cruel or unforgiving. Because I'd already moved on. I'd already built a life without her. I'd already healed. I wrote back. 1 page, brief and honest. Thank you for the apology. It means something to receive it even now. I hope you've found peace with yourself. I'm happy. I have a husband who loves me, work that fulfills me. People in my life who show up. I've built a family that chooses me every day, not because of what I do but because of who I am. I forgive you. Not for your sake, for mine. I forgive you because carrying anger was exhausting and I'm tired of carrying it. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I wish you well, but I don't want a relationship. That door closed a long time ago. I hope you understand. Take care of yourself. I sent it, and then I let it go. All of it. The hurt, the anger, the need for her to understand what she'd cost me. I released it like a balloon into the sky and watched it disappear. That night, Daniel asked if I was okay. I thought about it before answering. Yeah, I said I really am, so here's where I am now. 37 years old, superintendent of a thriving school district. Married to someone who sees me, surrounded by people I chose and who chose me back. My work impacts thousands of students. My decisions shape educational policy. My voice matters in rooms where decisions get made, and somewhere in Bellevue, my mother lives her life, attending charity functions and garden parties, telling anyone who asks that her daughter is a superintendent. She's finally proud to claim me, now that my title sounds impressive enough, but she doesn't get to be part of my life. That's the price she paid for making love conditional. I don't hate her. I don't wish her harm. I just don't need her anymore. And that's a freedom I never imagined I'd find. If you're watching this, and you've ever been told your career isn't good enough, your choices aren't worthy, your path isn't valuable, I want you to hear this. You don't need validation from people who refuse to see you. You don't need approval from people who make love conditional. You need to build a life that fills you up. Surround yourself with people who celebrate you. And stop waiting for permission to be proud of yourself. Teaching wasn't a mistake. It was the best decision I ever made. Not because it led to superintendent, not because it eventually earned me respect. Because it connected me to purpose. Because it let me change lives. Because it taught me that meaning matters more than money. That showing up matters more than status. That loving what you do is worth more than any salary. I am a teacher. I will always be a teacher, even with a different title. And I'm proud of that. Fiercely, unapologetically proud. My family's rejection doesn't change that. Their eventual acceptance doesn't validate it. I validate it every single day. When I wake up and choose this work again. That's my story. That's how I went from being the disappointing daughter to standing on a stage with the governor. That's how I learned that family isn't always blood, that success isn't always money, that sometimes the best revenge is building a beautiful life and not inviting the people who hurt you to witness it. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt unseen or undervalued or ashamed of choosing passion over profit, hit that like button. Let me know I'm not alone in this. Subscribe if you want more stories about choosing yourself, setting boundaries, and building the life you actually want instead of the one other people expect. And drop a comment telling me, what's the choice you made that other people didn't understand? What's the thing you're proud of that someone else called a mistake? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission to be proud of who you are. You just need to show up for yourself the way you wish others had shown up for you. I'm Sarah Mitchell Torres, and I chose teaching. And I'd choose it again 1,000 times over. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued in your own family, hit that like button. Your support means everything and helps me keep bringing you these real stories that matter. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I share stories like this every week. Stories about people who refuse to be victims, who stood up for themselves even when it cost them everything. And drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Marcus's situation. Would you have sued your parents? Would you have let it go? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your perspective. Thanks for listening to this story. Thanks for being part of this community. And remember, standing up for yourself is never selfish. I'll see you in the next one.